So one of the most interesting questions I got this week in our Big 12 football mailbag is about the Big Ten dominance and whether or not that Big Ten dominance could trigger the SEC to make a move in conference realignment in a way that maybe it never expected or anticipated to have to do. Let's talk about it here on Heartland College Sports. I'm Pete Mundo. We do cover the Big 12, but obviously the Big 12 is a part of this entire conversation, whether we like it or not. And this is a conversation that is not going to go anywhere. All we ask from you is to like the video. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel, also on the podcast. So appreciate you doing that, especially if you're new and you are consuming this show for first, second, third time, whatever it might be. So this came on the message boards. We have the HeartlandCollegeSports.com message boards. They're free. You can join them. And it came from Nola Ear, Mountaineer fan. And he says here, Pete, could there be a Power One if the Big Ten wins another title this year against Miami? When does that Power One narrative come out? If the Big Ten owns the SEC over the next few years, does the SEC get more aggressive in ACC expansion? In other words, might the SEC take teams like Miami just to keep the Big Ten from getting them? It's an outstanding question, and the answer to that in my mind is yes. The question is it what Miami would want if that ever came to fruition? Because the Big Ten is the it girl right now, whether we like it or not, in the Big 12, in the SEC, or in the ACC. If the ACC wins the national championship, the narrative is going to be the ACC was great, and the narrative will be Miami was great, and the rest of the ACC was good, but who else is really elite in the ACC? If Indiana finishes off this magical season, well, the narrative is going to be the Big Ten is elite, and it's deep, and it's the best conference in America, hands down. And a big part of that is going to be because of what's happening across the board in bowl games and the college football playoff, having a couple of teams there, obviously, rolling through a couple of these big playoff games. And you know what? The narrative is going to be well-earned right now for the Big Ten. You can't dispute it. If you're a Big 12 fanboy, which I'll admit I am, if you're a Big 10, ACC, I don't care who your conference is. This will be the best conference in the country. Heck, I think it is even if they lose on Monday night. I mean, that's what the Big Ten has done right now in the college football playoff and in this bowl season. So you can't dispute any of that. Now, does this trigger the SEC? Listen, I think Greg Sankey has had a lot of sleepless nights. He's the SEC commissioner. This guy was lobbying a month ago, well, more than that, 6 weeks ago now, to have how many teams in the playoff in the SEC? He wanted like 7 slots for the SEC. He looks like a total horse's butt right now, is what he looks like. And you know what? It's well-deserved. Now, the question's going to be what happens in the offseason. What happens when we get to next August? Are we going to see 10 teams out of the SEC in the top 25? Or are the AP voters going to learn their lesson? Are the national talking heads going to learn their lesson? That remains to be seen. But I could see the SEC saying, you know what? We gotta make a move. We got to do something. We got to solidify ourselves. I mean, I could see them overreacting in some ways and trying to peel off of Miami sooner than conference realignment is expected to happen just because there's pressure. I'm not saying it's happening tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. But I could see the SEC overreacting, especially as we get to a 9-game conference schedule in the SEC. That is long overdue. They can justify it by saying it doesn't matter, you're playing 9 games anyway. What's the big deal? Right? It's just another team that you're not all that likely to play is all it is as the conference continues to expand. But it builds their brand, especially in a state that the SEC has basically owned for a pretty long time. So that is where things are at right now. But it is a fascinating conversation to have now that the narrative of the SEC being head and shoulders above the rest of college football is over. It's done. I mean, Greg Sankey can't say any of the stuff he's been saying since he's been in that job with a straight face anymore. He's got to take his L and take his ball and go home for a little bit. At the very least, he's got to just chill out, take a back seat. At the very least, that's what Greg Sankey has to do. So it's a great question on the forums. We would love to see you over there. Subscribe. It's free. Just hang out with us. Talk some Big 12 at heartlandcollegesports.com. Click on the forums tab. We are answering your questions right now in the mailbag, talking Big 12, talking college football and college basketball, whatever's on your mind. We're doing it here on the show. So I got this on Facebook. This comes courtesy of Brian. Who will be the best 3 transfer quarterbacks next year in the Big 12? That's a very good question. I am going to go in order. Oklahoma State's Drew Mestamaker, the transfer from North Texas, bringing his basically whole offense, his head coach, to Stillwater. At number 2, I'll say Brendan Sorsby from Texas Tech, going from Cincinnati. And at number 3, I'll go Cutter Boley, who's coming to Arizona State by way of Kentucky. I think that Kenny Dillingham has a stud on his hands. I'm excited to see what he can do. These are not my top 3 quarterbacks. These are, as the question was from Brian on Facebook, the top 3 transfer quarterbacks in the Big 12. And those are the top 3 guys I would be looking at right now and saying, if I had to pick transfer quarterbacks to make the biggest noise, I can't go DJ Lagway at Baylor because I don't know what Baylor's going to be doing next year. I thought Lagway was fairly pedestrian at Florida last season. I don't know why we would magically think that's going to translate to the Big 12. So I'm just kind of pumping the brakes on that hype train, if it even exists. I mean, someone can let me know from Waco if that hype train is even real. But I wouldn't be buying it. I wouldn't. I'm not interested. I'll stay away from that. I've got no reason to believe at all that DJ Lagway is going to somehow be an upgrade over Sawyer Robertson, who was great, and look what happened to Baylor this season. So I'm going to pass on that one. Those would be my top 3 there. All right? Let us know where you're watching from as well if you're watching the show or listening to the show live. All right, where do we go next? We've got some questions popping up on the live chat. Hop in there. Let us know what you want to talk about here tonight. What else do we have? Mexican Medic. Who do you see at the top of the transfer portal when it's all said and done? Texas Tech? Oklahoma State? Well, it's going to be one of those 2 teams. Most of the portal is already done. The teams have added who they've wanted to add. Now, I would lean Oklahoma State just because the latest rankings I saw from 24/7 had them as one of the top 2 or 3 classes in the country. It had Texas Tech somewhere around 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there. Now, Tech could have some massive 4 or 5-star addition and leapfrog them. I suppose that's possible. But remember, too, it's important to note how these rankings are done. It's high school recruiting, and it's the transfer portal done the same way by most of these recruiting services. And many of you know this, but in case you don't, the recruiting rankings are not just done by the average rating of the player. It's also done by volume. So it's a combination of a volume game, a quality game, and a quantity game. So like Texas Tech's average rated player in the transfer portal that they picked up is higher than the Oklahoma State average transfer portal ranked player. But Oklahoma State has so many more players coming in, they rank higher on the rankings list. So with the way they do these rankings, I'll say Oklahoma State. If we're sitting here saying who's the team that's going to have the highest average rated recruit in the portal, I would go Texas Tech. And let me clarify something as well, because this came up the other day. I see you guys talking in the comments, and that's great. I mean, I do this. I've got a daily radio show in Kansas City. I talk to callers during the show. It's no strings attached. Anything goes as long as you're FCC compliant. So not much bothers me. Like, seriously, I don't – you say whatever you want about me. Sometimes I get some weird insults. Somebody said the other day in the chat, wow, this guy's voice is terrible. There's a lot of insulting things you can say about me I don't think my voice is one of them. Not that I've got, the golden voice, but I'll say my voice is like pretty good for doing this for a living. There's a lot of other ways I would insult me. I'll just put it that way without mentioning my voice. I'm just saying. So I try to get to as many comments as I can. But someone brought up the other day in the comments section saying, hey, Pete, of course you're talking about Texas Tech and the money. I'm unsubscribed. All you do is talk about Tech and the money. I was talking about Tech and the money in the transfer portal, and I also talked about Oklahoma State and the money, and I talked about Arizona State and the money. They're my three big winners right now in the transfer portal, and they're all spending money and asking for money. I mean, Kenny Dillingham was begging for $20 million checks a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, and I said this the other day, the folks in Stillwater have opened up the checkbook. That was part of my commentary when I ranked the top three portal classes so far in the Big 12. They had to. You don't get big recruiting classes unless you open up the checkbook. So it's just everyone knows this. It's no one's picking. And if anyone's had Tech's back on this stuff, it's me. I mean, I'm the one who's written about how all the national talking heads do with Texas Tech is talk about the money, but they don't do it with LSU. They don't do it with Alabama. They don't do it with anybody else in the Big Ten of the SEC. But when Texas Tech's name comes up, it's always about Cody Campbell and the money. I'm the one who has started that conversation in large part over the last few months. So let's pump the brakes on that. I've got your back in Lubbock. I always have had your back in Lubbock. So let's all be on the same page. That's all. That's all it's about, man. We're good. Carla says, if the college football playoff goes to 16 teams, how should the Big 12 position itself? Good question, Carla. And that would depend on how we're going to go about doing this. If we stay under the current format where it's just 1 through 16, then the Big 12 has got to do everything in its power to try to basically say, okay, fine, we may not in a given year have a top 2 or 3 team in the country, but we've got a lot of teams that we believe are in the top 10 to 15 that are teams 12, 13, 14, 15. And then what the Big 12 is going to have to do is go win some games on the road. If what happens to the college football playoff if we get 16 and we get 1v16, 2v15, we get first round games on campus, which we should get, no buys. Buys are not working out. We then get second round games on campus, which we should get. The Big 12 is likely only going to have one team in the top 8, right? One team that gets a home game in the first round if we go to 16, and that's how it's set up. The Big 12 has to know that. That's all, frankly, and I say this as a Big 12 guy, that's all the Big 12 deserves right now, barring a season like Texas Tech had. And then you've got to go on the road and win some of these games. It's as simple as that. But you've got to squeeze in as many games or as many teams as you can into that 12 to 16 range. This year, Utah would have been in there. BYU would have been in there. And I think that BYU and even, both BYU and Utah would have been well positioned to go on the road and win a game. I'm not saying that, they definitely would have won without knowing what that matchup would have been off the top of my head. But Utah, the advanced metrics showed that Utah was a top 10 team in the country. They just happen to run into BYU and Texas Tech on their schedules this season. And BYU, Bear Bachmeier as a true freshman on the road would have been a tough spot. But that team was also well-positioned and was built to give a team a tough test on the road with the defense and the running game. So that's what the Big 12 really is going to have to angle on. Should the Big 12's second and third teams get into a college football playoff over the SEC's 6th or 7th teams? Because that's probably what we're looking at. That's probably what the conversation comes down to. And the answer to that, based on how the SEC is playing, should be yes. The Big Ten may be a different story depending on what the teams are in that 12 to 16 range. But that's really where the conversation has to go. And that's how the Big 12 needs to really position and brand itself. Not saying you take anything away from your top 1 or 2 teams in the conference, but the reality is this league is 1-7 in the college football playoff since it began. So you can't sit there if you're a Big 12 guy, which I am, and be like, oh, this conference is getting screwed in the playoff. We got to win some of these games. But you can make the case if you go to 16 that we've got a lot of teams in that top 15, 16. They may not be top 10, but they're top 15 teams. And here's what we can do to go out there and try to have success. And that's how Brett Yormark has to brand this, and that's how this thing has to be pitched going forward. I'm Pete Mundo on Heartland College Sports. We are a Big 12 channel here, a Big 12 podcast, a Big 12 radio show, and we are grateful you are here as a part of it as well. Please do leave a rating and a review on the podcast if you're new, and same thing on the YouTube channel. Please make sure that you are subscribed right now. Right? Yeah, just check real quick right now as you're watching. All right. Let's get to some of your other questions. We've got this from Stan on Facebook. Is the current college football playoff the best we can do? If not, should more teams be added or be trimmed down? Well, it's interesting. They're going to add, obviously, Stan. They're going to add. There's no doubt about it. Should they add? No. I mean, let's be honest. There's probably 3 to 4 teams every year that can win the national championship. But it's about TV money. It's about TV revenue. And the conversation is how much money can we make at these programs? And ESPN says, you know what? If we're going to pay you, we'll give you the inventory. We'll give you the games. They got to figure out what to do when it comes to these bowl games. No one wants the Orange Bowl or the Sugar Bowl to be a semifinal or a quarterfinal. No one cares. They've got to have the season wrapped up by January 1. All those things need to happen. The schedule's a mess. The bowls are a mess. Games have to be on campus, at the very least, first and second rounds. Get rid of the buys. So is this the best we can do? To answer your question, Stan, no, it's not the best we can do. Should it be tweaked immediately? Absolutely. No doubt about it, man. It's got to be tweaked as soon as possible. It should be tweaked by next season if they're doing their jobs. But we'll see if that actually happens. But expansion's coming, even though, really what we've seen during the history of the playoff is that there are 2 to 4 teams that can win a national championship. Now, that being said, it brings up an interesting point, which is why not let the JMUs of the world and the Coastal Carolinas of the world into the college football playoff? Because if there's only 2 to 4 teams that can win it, why are we worrying about the 6th team in the SEC? Give JMU a shot. Let's try to catch a little magic and have a little fun. And the fans obviously love those upsets. They just haven't really happened yet. It's much easier to find a Davidson in college basketball or a Loyola Chicago in college basketball than it is to do in college football. It's just much easier based on how the sport's played. So you get one guy gets a hot hand from three-pointer, it's game over. Football is just too complicated for that. What else? We got Cole here on Facebook. Cole's got a question for us. Cole, let's see. Cole says, in McKinney, Texas, hello in McKinney, Texas, Cole, where does Houston sit in your transfer portal radar? I think we'll see Houston at the top of the conference next season in football. There, I said it. Are you on board? Well, so much of the Big 12 is going to be determined by what? By who you actually end up playing. It's just a fact. So I just want to pull up Houston's schedule real quick, and I know it's super early. They've got Colorado on the road, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Cincinnati, UCF, at K-State, at Texas Tech, at Utah, at West Virginia. All right, I'm going to answer your question with a no, Cole. I actually think with that schedule, Houston may be poised to take a step back. Now, a step back from a 10-win season, maybe 8 wins. Do I think that Houston stays competitive? Absolutely. Do I think they're at the top of the conference next year? I do not. That is a brutal road schedule. You got to go to Boulder, Manhattan, Lubbock, Salt Lake City, and Morgantown? Nah. Nope. Now, as for where they're at when it comes to the transfer portal, I mean, I haven't looked at the rankings as of this conversation. Let me see where they're at right now. They're middle of the pack, but they've got some high-quality guys coming in. So when you look at the high quality of guys they've got, I mean, they've got obviously a good setup. So let me just see here real fast. I can't get it to pull up here. But long and short is I'm not all in on Houston just yet for next year, my man. Sorry. Joe, what do you have for me, Joe? With the Big Ten wanting to go to 16 and then a 2014 playoff, SEC getting upset, should Brett Yormark get on board with the Big Ten to bring down the SEC's power? And with Joel Klatt saying the grind narrative of the SEC needs to die and die quickly. You know, the good news is this. The SEC narrative is dead, as it should be. They are going to 9 conference games. I don't want to hear these guys bitch and moan, oh, man, oh, the SEC, oh, the 9-game grind. I don't want to hear it. I don't. It's over. It's done. It's BS. Okay? Nobody is going to buy that nonsense anymore next season. I don't care how often Greg Sankey says it. I don't care how often Lane Kiffin says it. I don't want to hear Kalen DeBoer say it. I don't want to hear some of the guys I'm friends with who do this for a living say it. Okay? No one wants to hear it. People are over that. I started this website because I was sick of hearing that in 2014. When I started Heartland College Sports, I was sick of that. Finally, it's over. It's done. It's dead. The SEC's motto was, well, I guess it still is, it just means more. What it really should be now is it used to mean more. They have taken a back seat. Now, to the first part of your question, with the Big Ten wanting to go to 16, then 24, should Brett Yormark get on board with the Big Ten and bring down the SEC's power? I would not get on board just because it may hurt the SEC. I would get on board if I'm Brett Yormark because I think it helps the Big 12. And that's really all that should matter here. Does it help the Big 12 conference? If it does, then do it. If not, I wouldn't go down that road necessarily. I wouldn't. Now, I do think access for the Big 12 right now is critical. So if the Big 10's like, we want to keep expanding, and if there's a nugget in there, at least a minimum guarantee for teams and conferences, then let's have that conversation. I know that the 4-4-2-2 model is out there. That feels dead to me. With the Big Ten getting 4, the SEC getting 4, the ACC and the Big 12 getting 2 apiece. That feels dead. Not because the Big Ten may not be worth 4. The SEC ain't worth 4. It's not. And you know what? You just need to find one mega billionaire donor to step up to the plate and change your college football program tomorrow. That's all you need. If you find a couple, that's great. Okay? But the idea of a blue blood is by and large dead. So you can't really do this based on what you think the conference hierarchies are because they can change tomorrow. If Wake Forest gets some billionaire who's like, I'm dumping $40 million a year into the football team. I don't care. I've got the dough. I want to win. Wake Forest is going to win under this current model. And if half a dozen billionaires out of the Big 12 or the ACC do it, the sport changes tomorrow. So you can't do anything over the long term that somehow stacks up one Power 4 over the other based on what was true 5 or 10 years ago. It's done. It's dead. It's finished. It can't happen. So I'd like to think that those conversations of minimum bids per league will fall by the wayside. And if expansion's just the name of the game, I think that's overall a good thing for the Big 12 conference. I'm Pete Mundo on Heartland College Sports. Make sure you are subscribed here to the channel. We cover the Big 12, but we'll all do it all. College football and college basketball too. All right, what do we have? What is this one here? Pete, do you foresee pre-conference games schedules changing to stronger opponents? Will that help the Big 12 gain respect in football? Yes, it will. It's going to take some time, though, because these schedules are set so far in advance, which I hate. Absolutely hate. Does TCU have the hardest schedule of 2026? I don't know. I haven't looked at the TCU schedule, to be honest. I'll take a quick peek right now and see what I've got here. TCU plays at Arizona, at Baylor, BYU and Utah at home, Kansas and Kansas State at home, West Virginia at home, at Texas Tech, at UC. Oh, my gosh. That's brutal. Now, Houston's maybe a little tougher, but gosh dang. Yeah, that's brutal for TCU. At Tech, BYU, and Utah, at least you get them at home. I mean, I would say I would lean to Houston's being tougher just because their road games are brutal. At least TCU is getting BYU and Utah at home. So I'll answer that by saying no, and I would actually give Houston the edge on the tougher schedule. Pete, what do you want to see from the TNT media partners coming up next season? Specifically TNT and then also Big Noon Kickoff. They were good partners, obviously better than ESPN, although ESPN came to the party late. I was happy to see that with a couple of college game days there in November. TNT did a good job. I liked TNT's coverage. I'm not sure how you all felt, but I liked TNT's coverage, and I thought there's a lot of room to grow. Brett Yormark obviously has a relationship with TNT dating back to his time in the NBA, so that's something I think that they can build upon. You know, I'd like to see more Big 12 guys in there. I didn't have a problem with Victor Cruz and the guys they had on board and Mike Golick Jr. I mean, you know, they were fine. They were good. They were pros. I just would love to have it feel more Big 12. It didn't feel Big 12 to me. They did a good job covering the Big 12, but the TNT presentation didn't feel Big 12 because it wasn't guys that any of us watched play in the Big 12. And I'm not saying it has to be that, but if that's the angle you're going for, like it'd be like an SEC network with a bunch of Big 10 guys or Big 12 guys. But no, they lean into the SEC. They lean in to what the channel is and what the audience expectations are. And TNT, as much as I love a meritocracy, kind of went with who do we think the good broadcasters are? And there's something to be said for that. I mean, you see plenty of these guys who have no business being in a booth and have no business being in a studio. You do see a lot of that. There's no doubt about it. But there was nobody with a Big 12 tie on the whole broadcast crew in the studio or at the games. So I'd like to at least get some of that going into next season. Now, don't ask me who. I don't have a list in front of me of Big 12 guys who can be broadcasters or have been broadcasters. So I don't have that list magically in front of me. But that's not my job right now. There are TNT executives making a lot of money that are supposed to be out there coaching up, finding, and developing future television talent for these broadcasts. That's on them to do. Start them small, teach them, coach them up. It's not easy. The ones that are really good make it easy. But that's where I think they can improve things going forward. No doubt about it. Okie Lights, how much longer do conference championship games last? Maybe a couple of years. I mean, the problem is the conferences make a lot of money off them. That's the double-edged sword. But if you keep growing the playoff, you add games. Already, Indiana's going to play 16 games. That's basically an NFL season. It's too long. It takes too long to get the season done in January. They should be playing first-round playoff games that first weekend in December, 1v16, 2v15 on campus. That's it. I hope the conference championship game is done sooner rather than later. They feel antiquated. They feel meaningless. The fans don't care. The tickets are cheap. The stadiums aren't even full all the time anymore. The ACC stadium had more empty seats than it did fans in that ACC championship game between, Duke and Virginia, I think it was. So Big 12 had a great crowd. Tech and BYU showed up, but people are just not buying into these games like they used to. So it's time for them to go. I'm Pete Mundo. Hey, before you leave us, please make sure you are with the channel. You are subscribed on YouTube and also on the podcast. And if you're new, drop that 5-star rating and review. Share the show. We keep growing, and it is because of you. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon, and go Big 12.